Shabbat shalom. All right, there we go. Glad to be back. A little bit under the weather last week, but I'm feeling fine now, as we said, thanks to Dan. That's what everybody was saying this morning. Got Dan's crud. But we are here in the house of Yah, coming to study the word of Yah. Before I get started, I would encourage all of you, either here or those who are watching, to be covered with the righteousness of Messiah. Because to me, this doesn't look very warm, and it doesn't look very comfortable. Fig leaf. Right? All the way back to the garden. You can either try to cover yourself, or you can be covered with the righteousness of the Messiah. All right. If we would, anybody who would like to join in, let's give a shout to Yah with the trumpets and the shofars. What a wonderful sound. All right, this week's Torah portion, Vayeshev. And this is going to be in Genesis 37:1 through Genesis 40:23, Haftorah, Amos 2:6 through 3:8. And in the gospel portion, we have Matthew 1:18 through 25. Vayeshev. That's the Strong's number, 3427, Yashav, and it means to live, to settle, to dwell, and many other meanings. Let's begin in Genesis 37 with just verse 1. And it reads, Vayeshev Yaakov, and lived Jacob in the land of the travels of his father, in the land of Canaan. And that word there for travels is magur in the Hebrew. And it says by extension, when you look it up, first is the temporary resident. By extension, it says a permanent residence. So eventually, this is going to be Yasharel's permanent residence. But now, let's do what do they call it? Is it Google Earth? Is that what the program they have on the... Let's do a Google Earth and locate this place, this Canaan. We look down and we spy out a land of the humiliated. Canaan is the Strong's Hebrew number 3667, meaning humiliated. It is a cursed land of the humiliated. For it is written, "Cursed be Canaan," in Genesis 9:25. The Holy Scriptures are not some collection of antiquated writings. As Moses said, the instructions or laws, they are our life. They should supersede all other instructions, like the Constitution is supposed to do here in the U.S. But for a believer, these words are the words of life and should supersede all other instructions in our lives. We have studied over the years how the life of Joseph points to Messiah as a suffering servant. I just watched one this morning with Lion and Lamb with Ephraim, Judah, And I think, what a wonderful name, right? Ephraim, Judah. But anyway, he made all those wonderful connections that we've all studied over the years, showing Joseph, Messiah, Joseph, Messiah, Joseph, Messiah. So I don't look to be pointing out all them connections again today, because they're everywhere when you go, and we've done it before in times past and years past as we studied this Torah portion. But how about not Messiah, but how about us who say that we are the body of Messiah? After all, these words, they are our life, because the word Messiah is the way, the truth, and the life. So how about we kind of look at how it may pertain to us as being the body of Messiah? For these are words that are written, like I said, they are not antiquated, just old, outdated stories. They are things we are supposed to be living by and putting our trust in, because we believe that he is the true and living God. Joseph, Yosef, is the Strong's Hebrew number 3130. But get this, it's the future tense. The future tense of the Strong's Hebrew 3254, Yasaf, which is to add or to augment to. So the name Yosef really is pointing to some future things, right? If anyone is trying to add to the commonwealth of Yasharel into the future, it is us. We that live in the latter days, because as it was back then, looking forward, we are that future. But as I was saying earlier about the land of Canaan, make no mistake, this realm now is definitely not the garden. It is a cursed and humiliated place that we're in, that could have you, as Joseph was, go down into distress, down into Egypt, because that's what it means to be in Egypt. First he was in the land of Canaan, and then he was sent down into a land of distress. Neither one seems like it would be a nice place to be. The rulers of the darkness of this world and the spiritual wicked ones in the heavenlies, they're doing all that they can to rob humanity's dignity, to rob humanity's self-respect, and to degrade us in this day and time, and maybe even bodily, as we see what's going on in the world. If you guys haven't just watched the news, they have the new variant out. And I've even heard them, and I didn't mean to go here, but I'm going to go ahead. I even heard them project into the future where they were going to have the Omega variant. Well, what's the Omega? It's the end, right? So they might even project in the end game way ahead of time. But anyway, they're trying to rob us of our dignity, our self-respect, and even degrade us. Perhaps, like I said, even bodily. So if we, as the body of Messiah, may be pictured as Joseph, if we suffer, may we suffer well. And that's probably, if I could say anything, what I would like to talk about today is suffering well. As Joseph did, and teeing off from that story, we're going to look into some other great men of Yah, because Yah is the one who makes men great, who were suffering servants. I could go on and say a lot of things on my own, but I always like to let Yah's word speak for itself. speak for itself. So we'll start off again in the Torah portion, but reading only 2 verses. In Genesis 40, suffering servants and suffering well is what we're going to be looking at today. So in Genesis 40 and verses 15 and 16, we know the story of Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold by the Midianites and the Ishmaelites down into Egypt, becomes a great man in Potiphar's house. The wife wants to sleep with him. He says no. He's betrayed by her, put into another pit, a dungeon, and then he becomes a great leader or caretaker in that place as well, because Yah is always with him no matter how much suffering he's going through. And then we get to the story in the Torah portion of the baker and the cupbearer and the dreams and all that. But what I want to look at is just Genesis 40, 15 through 16, where he says to them, "But remember me with yourself when it is well with you, and do please with me kindness, and mention me to Paro, and bring me out from house this. For truly I was stolen from the land of the Hebrews." Now, thinking of forward speaking, he didn't say I was stolen out of the land of Canaan, that humiliated place that's cursed. He's already calling it the land of the Hebrews because he knows the promises of Abraham. "For truly I was stolen from the land of the Hebrews, and also here not I have done anything that they should have put me into the dungeon." And that word there in the Hebrew is the pit. Do we not see another connection there with the Messiah? Someone that didn't do anything and was put into a pit. That is suffering well for doing good. That's all Joseph did, was do what his father had sent him to do, and ends up down in Egypt, down in distress into this pit. So that word right there where he says, "I have not done anything," it is the Strong's Hebrew number 3972. And Joseph is literally saying that he doesn't have speck, spot, stain, or blemish to have ended up in that pit. Now, is that not another perfect picture of the Messiah? Without spot or blemish, doing nothing wrong. In fact, Joseph's known as the Zadik, they say in Scripture. Some say he's the only one known, especially in the Jewish writings and commentaries, as the Zadik. And we can never really find anything that says he did wrong, just like I say about Joshua. Back in the book of Joshua, you never see anything that says Joshua did wrong either. So these are all types of the Messiah. But suffering for doing good, it could happen, and it does happen. Messiah said, "In this world you will have trials, you will have tribulation, you will have trouble, but be of good cheer and take heart, because he's overcome the world." But that doesn't mean that there still may some things that we go through that we may not understand. We know Messiah is the example, but others have suffered for good. Suffering servants. Let's go to 2 Chronicles 18:1 through 27. And I'll be reading the King James Version for this. Second Chronicles 18:1 through 27. We see another suffering servant. And it reads, Now Jehoshaphat had riches and honor and abundance, and joined affinity with Ahab, king of the northern kingdom there of Israel, Jehoshaphat being the king of Judah. And after certain years he went down to Ahab, to Samaria, and Ahab killed sheep and oxen for him in abundance, and for the people that he had with him, and persuaded him to go up with him to Ramoth Gilead. And Ahab king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat king of Judah, Wilt thou go with me to Ramoth Gilead? And he answered him, I am as thou art, and my people as thy people, knowing that they're all brethren, and we will be with thee in the war. And Jehoshaphat said unto the king of Israel, Inquire, I pray thee, at the word of Yah today. Therefore the king of Israel gathered together of prophets 400 men, and said unto them, Shall we go to Ramoth Gilead to battle, or shall I forbear? And they said, Go up, for Elohim will deliver it into the king's hand. And Jehoshaphat, being a man full of wisdom, he says, Is there not here a prophet of Yah besides all these 400 that you got? Knowing that they're not true prophets, that we may inquire of him. And the king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, There is yet one man by whom we may inquire of Yah, but I hate him. For he never prophesied good unto me, but always evil. Maybe he was a man telling him the truth of what he should be repenting and turning away from with that wicked wife of his, Jezebel, and the prophets of Baal. And the same as Micaiah the son of Imlah. And Jehoshaphat said, Let not the king say so. He must have heard of Micaiah and knew he was a true prophet of Yah. And the king of Israel called for one of his officers and said, Fetch quickly Micaiah the son of Imlah. And the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, sat either of them on his throne, clothed in their robes, and they sat in a void place at the entering in of the gate of Samaria, places of judgment. And all the prophets prophesied before them. And Zedekiah the son of Kenaanah had made him horns of iron, and said, Thus saith Yah, with these thou shalt push Syria until they be consumed. And all the prophets prophesied saying, Go up to Ramoth Gilead and prosper, for Yah shall deliver it into the hand of the king. And the messenger that went to call Micaiah spake to him, saying, Behold, the words of the prophets declare good to the king, with one assent. Let thy word, therefore, I pray thee, be like one of theirs. Speak thou good. They're all saying nice things. Why don't you just join right in with them? Don't matter what the truth is. Everybody's doing it. And Micaiah said, As Yah liveth, even what my Elohim saith, that will I speak. And when he was come to the king said unto him, Micaiah, shall we go to Ramoth Gilead to battle, or should I forbear? And he told him what he really wanted to hear. And he said, Go you up and prosper, and they shall be delivered into your hand. That's what you want to hear, right, king? And the king said to him, How many times shall I adjure thee that thou shalt say nothing but the truth to me in the name of Yah? Well, sometimes if you ask to hear the truth, you're going to hear it. So then he says, I did see all Israel, the northern kingdom, scattered upon the mountains as sheep that have no shepherd. And Yah said, These have no master. Let them return, therefore, every man to his house in peace. And the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, Did I not tell thee that he would not prophesy good unto me, but evil? Again he said, Therefore hear the word of Yah. I saw Yah sitting upon his throne, and all the host of heaven standing on his right hand and on his left. That heavenly realm where Yah is the host of many armies. And Yah said, Who shall entice King Ahab of Israel that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead. Sometimes you want to do things that are contrary to what Yah wants you to do. He'll let you have it. So he's going to allow it. And one spake after this manner, and another after that manner. Then there came out a spirit, and stood before Yah, and said, I will entice him. And Yah said unto him, wherewith? And he said, I will go out and be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And Yah said, thou shalt entice him, and thou shalt also prevail. Go out and do even so. Now therefore, behold, Yah hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of these thy prophets, and Yah hath spoken evil against thee. And Micaiah said, behold, thou shalt see on the day when thou shalt go into an inner chamber to hide thyself. I skipped one there. Let me go back to 23. Then Zedekiah the son of Kenana came near and smote Micaiah upon the cheek, and said, which way went the Spirit of Yah from me to speak unto thee? And Micaiah said, behold, thou shalt see on the day when thou shalt go into an inner chamber to hide thyself. And the king of Israel said, and here's the suffering servant part, a man that's doing nothing but telling the truth. Then the king of Israel said, take ye Micaiah, and carry him back to Ammon, the governor of the city, and to Joash, the king's son. Take him back to my son. And say, thus saith the king, put this fellow in the prison, and feed him with bread of affliction, and with water of affliction, until I return in peace. And Micaiah said, if thou certainly return in peace, then hath not Yah spoken by me. And he said, hearken, all you people. Though he knows he's going to suffer for saying the word, he'll tell it even to kings and counselors. We don't hear much of Micaiah after this. At least I couldn't find it. You have the same account in the First Kings, I think in chapter 22 or somewhere around there. And you don't hear of Micaiah much after that either. I wonder how long he stayed in prison for speaking Yah's word. A man suffering just for telling the truth. Another suffering servant. Let's read in Jeremiah. Jeremiah 37:13 through 38:6 is where I want to go. Great men of God suffering for good, just like Joseph. Jeremiah 37. Thirteen, 38 through 6. And it reads, and when he was in the gate of Benjamin, a captain of the ward was there, whose name was Urijah, the son of Shelemiah, the son of Hananiah. And he took Jeremiah the prophet, saying, thou fallest away to the Chaldeans. You're guilty of treason. Now we know when you read the book of Jeremiah in the beginning, Yah said, I'm going to give you the words to speak. Don't be afraid of them. I'll make your head like flint. And I think if I remember right, he even tells them, but the people aren't going to listen to you. How many people do you try to talk to about some of the real truths of God, and they won't listen to you? But he tells them, I think my page turned on me there. I'm in 37, and that was verse 13. And at the end of the verse, this captain takes Jeremiah and tells him, "Thou fallest away to the Chaldeans. You are committing treason with the people of Babylon." Then said Jeremiah, "It is false. I fall not away to the Chaldeans." But he hearkened not to him. So Uriah took Jeremiah and brought him to the princes. Wherefore the princes were wroth with Jeremiah and smote him, and put him in prison in the house of Jonathan the scribe, for they had made that the prison. When Jeremiah was entered into the dungeon and into the cells, and Jeremiah had remained there many days, then Zedekiah the king sent and took him out, and the king asked him secretly in his house, and said, "Is there any word from Yah?" And Jeremiah said, "There is. For said he, Thou shalt be delivered into the hand of the king of Babylon." Now we got a king of Babylon coming our way. And Yah's going to allow it. Right? What was will be. But that doesn't mean you have to put your trust in the king of Babylon. Verse 18, "Moreover, Jeremiah said unto the king Zedekiah, What have I offended against thee, or against thy servants, or against this people, that ye have put me in prison? I haven't done anything wrong. I've only done that which Yah has told me, and said that which Yah has told me." Same thing the Messiah said, "I have only come to speak the words that the Father gave me." "Where are now your prophets which prophesied unto you, saying, The king of Babylon shall not come against you, nor against this land? Therefore hear now, I pray thee, O my lord the king. Let my supplication, I pray thee, be accepted before thee, that thou cause me not to return to the house of Jonathan the scribe, lest I die there." Then Zedekiah the king commanded that they should commit Jeremiah into the court of the prison, and that they should give him daily a piece of bread out of the baker's street, until all the bread in the city was spent, there being besieged. Soon there will be famine in the land. Thus Jeremiah remained in the court of the prison. Some of these words are hard to pronounce, so bear with me. Then Shephatiah the son of Mattan, and Gedaliah the son of Pashur, and Jukal the son of Shelemiah, and Pashur the son of Malchiah, heard the words that Jeremiah had spoken unto all the people, saying, "Thus saith Yah, He that remaineth in this city shall die by the sword, by the famine, and by the pestilence." I always say when I hear that, the sword, the famine, and the pestilence. Fast forward to the future, where does that take you all the time? The four horses of Revelation. The sword, the famine, and the pestilence. But he tells him, "But he that goeth forth to the Chaldeans shall live, for he shall have his life for a prey, and shall live. Thus saith Yah, this city shall surely be given into the hand of the king of Babylon's army, which shall take it." Now, in the end times, isn't that city going to also be given into the king of Babylon, spiritually speaking? Therefore the princess said unto the king, "We beseech you, let this man be put to death. For thus he weakened the hands of the men of war that remaineth in this city, and the hands of all the people, in speaking such words unto them. For this man seeketh not the welfare of this people, but the hurt." Then Zedekiah the king said, "Behold, he is in your hand, for the king is not he that can do anything against you." Then took they Jeremiah and cast him into the dungeon of Malchiah, the son of Hamelech, that was in the court of the prison. And they let down Jeremiah with cords, and in the dungeon There was no water down in the pit, but mire. So Jeremiah sunk into the mire. So we're seeing all these great men, or what I call Yasharel, those who are right with God, another way of saying Israel, suffering for the word, suffering for doing good, just like Joseph did when he said, "How can I sin against God by doing this thing?" This man did nothing except speak Yah's word, for he was a prophet. And like Joseph, and like the other one that we just read of in Chronicles, ended up in prison. But now we're going to go and read of Brother Paul. Brother Paul in Acts 24. And I'll be reading the whole chapter. And it reads, "And after 5 days, Hananiah, I think it is in Hebrew, something like that, means favored of Yah, the high priest. He descended with the elders and with a certain orator named Tertullus, who informed the governor against Paul. And when he was called forth, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying, seeing that by thee we enjoy great quietness, and that very worthy deeds are done unto this nation by thy providence," laying it on thick to the governor, as we say, maybe kissing a little. "We accept it always and in all places, most noble Felix, with all thankfulness." That's how you get in good, right? Rubbing elbows. Saying smooth words and lifting a man up who's already probably so proud of himself that he couldn't think he could get much higher. "Notwithstanding that I be not further tedious unto thee, I pray thee that thou wouldest hear us of thy clemency a few words. For we have found this man a pestilent fellow, and a mover of sedition among all the Jews throughout the world, and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes, who also hath gone about to profane the temple." All lies, right? "Whom we took and would have judged according to our law. But the chief captain Lysias came upon us, and with great violence took him away out of our hands, commanding his accusers to come unto thee, by examining of whom thyself mayest take knowledge of all these things, whereof we accuse him. And the Jews also assented, saying that these things were so. Then Paul, after that the governor had beckoned unto him to speak, answered, Forasmuch as I know that thou hast been of many years a judge unto this nation, I do the more cheerfully answer for myself." Paul didn't need a lawyer. He's a lawyer himself. A Pharisee, right? A Pharisee among Pharisees. If anyone knows the Torah, it is Paul. He doesn't need anyone to speak on his behalf. I do the more cheerfully answer for myself. Now, what does Messiah say? If you're ever delivered up, don't take any thought of what you might say, right? Because it's not going to be you speaking. It's going to be the Spirit, the Ruach of Yah that speaks. And we don't know if we will ever suffer to this degree, but it could be possible. This world is changing quickly. Because that thou mayest understand, verse 11, that there are yet but 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem for to worship. And they neither found me in the temple, disputing with any man, neither raising up the people, I didn't cause any commotion, neither in the synagogues, all the congregations, nor in the city, neither can they prove the things whereof they accuse me, a suffering servant. But this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the Elohim of my fathers, believe in all things which are written in the Torah and in the prophets. And have hope toward Elohim, which they themselves also allow, that there shall be a resurrection of the dead, both the just and the unjust. And herein do I exercise myself, to have always a conscience void of offense towards Elohim and toward men. Now after many years I came to bring alms to my nation and offerings, whereupon certain Jews from Asia found me purified in the temple, neither with multitude nor with tumult. I wasn't causing a ruckus. I was there to worship my God and doing things according to Torah. But these who ought to have been here before thee, his real accusers didn't even show up apparently, and object if they had aught against me, or else let these same here say if they have found any evil doing in me, where I stood before the council. Except for it be for this one voice that I cried standing among them, touching the resurrection of the dead, I am called in question by you this day. Suffering for proclaiming, not just to Israel, but to the world, you don't have to die. And we see in today's world, people are looking for ways where they can escape death. Well, it was proclaimed many, many, many centuries ago that there's a resurrection from the dead. And all that got this man was grief. And when Felix heard these things, having more perfect knowledge of that way, he deferred them and said, when Lysias the chief captain shall come, I will know the uttermost of your matter. And he commanded a centurion to keep Paul, and to let him have liberty, and that he should forbid none of his acquaintance to minister or come unto him. And after certain days, when Felix came with his wife, Drusilla, which was a Jewess, he sent for Paul, and heard him concerning the faith in Christ and Messiah. And as he reasoned of righteousness, temperance, and judgment to come, that shook him up. And judgment to come, Felix trembled and answered, Go thy way for this time. When I have a convenient season, I will call for thee. He hoped also that money should have been given him of Paul, that he might loose him. Wherefore he sent for him the oftener, and communed with him. But after 2 years, Porcius Festus, Porky, he came into Felix's room, or into his chair of authority, and Felix, willingly to show the Jews a pleasure or a favor, left Paul bound, for no offense, bound. Now, I'll go ahead and skip to Acts 26 and continue on. And I'm going to start in verse 19 and go to 31. And this is when he's brought again before the governor, and now King Agrippa is there also. So Paul says, Whereupon, O King Agrippa, I was not disobedient unto the heavenly vision, speaking of how he was struck down and all that, but showed first unto them of Damascus and at Jerusalem and throughout all the coast of Judea, and then to the nations, that they should repent and turn to Elohim. And when you repent, what will you do? And do works that show you have repented. For these causes the Jews caught me in the temple and went about to kill me. Isn't that something? Hey, you should turn around and do what God wants you to do. And what do they say? Kill him. Having therefore obtained help of Elohim, I continue unto this day, witnessing both to small and great like you, O King, saying none other things than those which the prophets and Moshe did say should come. That Mashiach should suffer, and that he should be the first that should show rise from the dead, that resurrection. The first fruits of the resurrection is in Messiah, and should show light unto the people and to the nations, starting in Jerusalem and going out from there. And as he thus spake for himself, Festus said with a loud voice, Paul, thou art beside thyself. Much learning doth make thee mad. Have any of you ever been accused of that? Speaking of biblical things, and people just said, man, that guy is off his rocker. He really believes that stuff written in that old antiquated book. Just stories, they say, right? Bedtime stories for the children sometimes, you know, Noah's Ark, all that kind of thing. But he said, I am not mad, most noble Festus, but speak forth the words of truth and soberness. For the king knoweth of these things, before whom also I speak freely. For I am persuaded that none of these things are hidden from him, for this thing was not done in a corner. The whole world had heard about Messiah, right? Wasn't done in a corner. Out there in the open for all to see. And then King Agrippa, believest thou the prophets? I know that thou believest. And then Agrippa said to Paul, almost thou persuadest me also to be a Christian. You almost got me believing in this Messiah you speak of, who's been actually raised from the dead. Why should that be a marvel, though? Aren't there people in the other scriptures that have been raised from the dead? Why should it be a marvel that Yah can raise people from the dead? He did it before Messiah. So Agrippa says unto Paul again, almost thou persuadest me to believe in this Messiah of yours. And Paul said, I would to Elohim that not only you, but also all that hear me this day were both almost and altogether such as I am, except these bonds, except that I suffer just for telling the truth. But I would that you would all be like me except for these bonds. And when he had thus spoken, the king rose up, and the governor, and Bernice, and they that sat with them. And when they were gone aside, they talked between themselves, saying, this man doeth nothing. Just like Joseph said. This man, they even knew. Just like Pilate knew about Messiah. This man doeth nothing worthy of death or of bonds. Yet he suffers as a servant of Yah. Then said Agrippa unto Festus, this man That's one more verse than I was going to go, but I'll read it. Then said Agrippa unto Festus, this man might have been set at liberty if he had not appealed unto Caesar. Well, we know that was God's plan anyway, that he must go to Rome. So it's all in Yah's hands anyway. But we see that Paul's in front of Porky and Agrippa. The other ones are also in front of people that are of the house of Yaakov, right? A lot of the suffering that we may suffer, it's going to come right from those who are supposed to be with us. Now, as I said earlier, the rulers of the darkness of this world and the spiritual wickedness in the heavenlies drives all that. It's Yah that allows it. And we can never forget, no matter what goes on, Yah's in control of all of it. There's no one that moves without his okay. No one. So now we can go on and on with those who suffer, like Job, like Tommy mentioned earlier, Daniel and his friends that went through the fire, and even Stephen, who suffered unto death, giving a good testimony, speaking the words of Yah. That's what got him killed. That's what got Messiah killed. All these people are in trouble, suffering for speaking truth. So we should never think it's something unusual, even if we suffer in little ways. There are many, what I call Yasharel, the upright in God, types that suffer for speaking the goodness of our Father and His Son. Some of us may suffer in just little ways, and some of us may suffer in bigger ways. And we don't even know where the rest of our life is going to lead us and what things we may be put through and come up against for believing what we believe. We need to remember that if we suffer, not to say that everyone who believes in the God of Israel will suffer, but we need to remember that if we suffer, like Joseph did in our Torah portion, that we should suffer well. Sounds kind of strange, doesn't it? If we're going to suffer, we should suffer well. So I'm going to close here with a pretty lengthy reading, because I like to read the words of Yah. A pretty lengthy reading from our brother Peter. And that's going to be in 1 Peter, and I'll start in 3. Eight. 1 Peter 3:8, and I'll read through 4:19, which I believe is the whole chapter of 4. So, in this letter, 1 Peter 3:8, he kind of sums it up by saying, finally, be ye all of one mind, having compassion one of another, love as brethren. Now that's not something all gooey, as I always say. Remember, this is love. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not covet, or any other ill will. Love as brethren. Be pitiful. Be courteous. Not rendering evil for evil or railing for railing, but contrariwise blessing. Knowing that ye are thereunto called, that ye shall inherit a blessing. For he that will love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil and his lips, that they may speak no guile. Kind of hard to do in the world we live in. Can get caught up into those things real quick. just with the kind of things we may want to listen to entertainment-wise. Let him turn from evil and do good. Let him seek peace and ensue it. For the eyes of Adonai are over the righteous, and his ears are open unto their prayers. But the face of Adonai is against them that do evil. And who is he that will harm you if you be followers of that which is good? There will be many that try. But if ye suffer for righteousness' sake, happy are ye. You should count it as a blessing. Didn't they do that in the book of Acts? Even after they were beaten, they counted it a blessing to be beaten for the name of Yahushua, of Jesus. And be not afraid of their terror, neither be troubled. They're trying to terrorize us every day. But sanctify Adonai Elohim in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you the reason of the hope that is in you, with meekness and fear. If I had to sum it up, I would say that hope that's in me is that I'm not going to die. That this is just a temporary situation, if you want to put it that way, that I'm in. And I have the hope of a resurrection without having to seek it through the devices of men, but by the will of Elohim. Having a good conscience, that whereas they speak evil of you as an evildoer, they may be ashamed that falsely accuse you of your good conversation in Mashiach. For it is better, if the will of God be so, that ye suffer for well-doing than for evil-doing. For Mashiach also hath once suffered for sins, the just one for the unjust one, that he might bring us to Elohim, being put to death in the flesh, but quickened by the Spirit, by which also he went and preached unto the spirits in prison, which sometime were disobedience, when once the long-suffering of Elohim waited in the days of Noah. Grace only in the New Testament. Look at what that says. When once the long-suffering of Elohim waited in the days of Noah. He was long-suffering and waiting even back then that men should turn and repent and look back to him and his ways. But while the ark was preparing, wherein few, that is only 8, were saved by water. The like figure whereunto even baptism doth also now save us. Now mine has in parentheses that not the putting away of the filth of the flesh, but the answer of a good conscience toward God. So that like figure, baptized, being born again, it's a picture of being born again as a free gift. Because it says right there, not the putting away of the filth of the flesh. No matter how hard we try, we're never going to cut it. That's not to say we shouldn't try. But it's a free gift from on high. By the resurrection of Messiah, Yahushua, who is gone into heaven and is on the right hand of God, angels and authorities and powers being made subject unto him. All power and authority in heaven and in earth has been given to the Son. Oh, just because some things are going on right now doesn't mean he's forgotten us. For as much then as Mashiach hath suffered for us in the flesh, arm yourselves likewise with the same mind. For he that hath suffered in the flesh hath ceased from sin, that he no longer should live in the rest of this, that he should no longer live the rest of his time in the flesh to the lust of men, but to the will of Elohim. For the time past of our life may suffice us to have wrought the will of the nations when we walked in lasciviousness, lust, excess of wine, revelings, banquetings, and abominable idolatries, all of which I can confess up here, like he was saying about Aaron there, that at least we can confess before the congregation that we have committed such abominable acts. I took part in all that. Practice it. Wherein they think it strange that ye run not with them to the same excess of wrath, speaking evil of you. Now, I can't say that I haven't stumbled along the way, but I don't run back to that stuff and to them gatherings and all that. Who shall give account to him that is ready to judge the quick and the dead? For this cause was the gospel preached also to them that are dead, walking dead, that they might be judged according to men in the flesh, but live according to Elohim in the spirit. We can be walking dead and not even know it until the light of the gospel shines upon us. We walk around this earth as dead men, thinking we live, but yet we're dead. But the end of all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober and watch unto prayer. And above all things have fervent love among yourselves, for love shall cover the multitude of sins. Use hospitality one to another without grudging. As every man hath received the gift, even so minister the same one to another, as good stewards of the manifold grace of Elohim. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of Elohim. Speak Yah's words and not many of your own. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of Elohim. If any man minister, let him do it with the ability which Elohim giveth, that Elohim in all things may be glorified through Yahushua Mashiach, to whom be praise and dominion forever and ever and ever and ever. Amen. Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial. Didn't you just ask that earlier, Josh, if fiery was a word? There it is right there. I don't know if you heard me say it is a word. Think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened unto you. Not everyone's going to suffer the same, but you will go through some fiery trials in your life. And if you suffer, suffer well. What did Job say? Even if he slay me. But rejoice inasmuch as ye are partakers of Mashiach's sufferings, that when his glory shall be revealed, ye may be glad also with exceeding joy. If ye be reproached for the name of Mashiach, happy are ye, for the spirit of glory and of Elohim resteth upon you. For on their part he is evil spoken, but on your part he is glorified. Now we're coming to the end here. But these are some powerful words. Verse 15. But let none of you suffer as a murderer, as a thief, or as an evildoer, or as a busybody in other men's matters. Yet if any suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed. If you're trying to do the things that Elohim asks of you in his holy Torah, in his holy scriptures, and you suffer for it, don't be ashamed of it. But let him glorify Elohim on his behalf. For the time has come that judgment must begin at the house of Elohim. And if it first begins with us, what shall the end of them that obey not the gospel? What shall be the end of them that obey not the gospel of Elohim? That's again where I was saying, where you're reading about the famine, the sword, and the plague. It's usually coming against the house of God first, against Yah's house first. So in my thinking anyway, I could be wrong, but even those 4 horsemen in Revelation, it may hit Yah's people first, that are disobedient, denying the master and not trying to do his will. You know, we read in the Torah portion today that Judah's sons were very wicked. And it says what? And Yah killed them. Both of them. Wasn't the devil. Wasn't another man. We can get to such a point where Yah will take us out if we're not careful. What shall the end of them that obey not the gospel of Elohim be? And if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the ungodly and the sinner appear? Now again, we know that not by works, right? Because this is all we could do is try to cover up our own shortcomings, like Adam and Eve did with the fig leaf. But the sinner, where shall the ungodly and the sinner appear? We don't have to be counted as sinners. If we take the free gift that's given to us from the Father through His Son, we don't have to be counted as sinners. Put on the righteousness of Messiah. Last verse in the Scriptures. Wherefore let them that suffer according to the will of Elohim commit the keeping of their souls to Him in well-doing, as unto a faithful Creator. Again, if we suffer, suffer well. Shabbat Shalom, brothers and sisters.
Thank you for watching a teaching from Emet HaTorah. If you are ever in the Odessa area, we would love to welcome you to our Shabbat service, 11 a.m. every Sabbath. For more information or for more teachings, feel free to find us on the web, www.emethatorahodessa.com. Also, you can find us on Facebook. Thank you. God bless you and your family. Shalom.